Hi, hello, welcome back to my living room. It happened again, where I sat down to film a whole series of videos with one specifically in mind to make sure that I got filmed, and of course, I forgot that specific one. So we're here to film it today. We are here to talk about what makes you DNF a book. For those of you not in the know, DNF means did not finish, and we just use it as shorthand here in the reading world, bookish world, to mean that we set a book down, we quit. What actually made me wonder about this was that YouTube was recommending me several videos that were like, why are readers putting down your story? So videos specifically for writers about why readers might be giving up on your story. And I was like, wow, that seems like a really difficult thing to just blanketly say in a video. This is 100% why readers are putting down your story. And after watching some of those videos, I'm like, yeah, all of this is so subjective. What one person finds boring, another person might enjoy. So I decided to poll people on my YouTube and just find out why my viewers DNF books. First of all, why don't I tell you why I DNF? Because I will DNF a book if I'm not having a good time, and there are a number of factors. Some of it does, quite frankly, come down to the fact that I'm a mood reader, and if I pick up something that I'm not in the mood for, I'm likely to set it down through no fault of the book. That has happened before, and I'm sure it was a wonderful book, I just wasn't in the mood for it like I thought I was. And unfortunately, as writers, there is nothing we can do about that. What your reader is in the mood for is all up to them. But other reasons that I will set down a book is the characters aren't engaging. Characters are a big deal for me. I can take a pretty slow-moving plot even if the characters are giving me a lot of nitty-gritty, good, juicy interactions. And the last thing that usually will make me DNF is if I cannot stand the writing. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the writing is bad, but there are just certain writing styles that I don't really like. For example, I really like a show versus tell style, and I have found that you can be very successful with a very tell-y style, but it's not for me. Those are the main reasons why I DNF a book. But now, let's look at my viewers and see what they have to say about why they DNF. I don't know if I'll be able to read all of these, but I'll do my best to find the most interesting ones or the most unique ones. This person says if nothing happens in the book for long stretches, boring/flat characters, conflicts based on something dumb, like the characters refusing to communicate, when one simple sentence solves everything. They like to be like, oh damn, when the conflict hits, and I think most of us can relate to that. I do agree that it is super fucking annoying when characters won't communicate, when a simple, like, one-sentence explanation will solve all of their problems. While I hate that trope, it doesn't necessarily make me DNF. This person mentions that if the book is not what they were expecting, like from the blurb or such, they will DNF, as well as being more liberal about DNFing a series. I used to push myself through a series I wasn't feeling because I read the first book, and it looked nice on my shelf if I read them all. Not every series gets better, and that's a big time commitment when I could be doing something else, so it's okay to stop with book one. 100% agree, especially as I am someone who doesn't read a lot of series anymore. Your book one had better be immaculate if you want me to keep reading your series. But that's a me thing. This person says they usually vet books pretty well before they start them, which is helpful if you're really looking to not have to DNF. I am less like that. I'm very like go with the flow, just like cruising around like, oh, this looks interesting, let me grab it. And then that does result in some DNFing sometimes. The only other thing I can think of is if the writing is absolutely awful. If the main character is really unlikable and is clearly not intentional, or if it's getting really preachy about stuff. Ooh, agree about the preachiness. I hate a preachy book. Preachy about stuff, especially stuff I disagree with, and honestly even stuff I do agree with it sometimes. I don't like reading fiction that has such an obvious agenda that the author is trying to force into my brain. Now, often your personal beliefs are going to bleed into your work. I say often, but I mean every time. There's really no way to avoid putting some of yourself into your story, and that includes your personal beliefs, be they political, be they religious, whatever. There are definitely ways that you can keep it from being preachy and keep it true to the world and the characters that you're writing in. It really just gets frustrating when it's clear that the author has an agenda, something that they want to make sure that they've driven into your brain, and you are not here for that message. A lot of people are saying if it starts out slow, it doesn't hook them within the first few chapters, or the main character doesn't grab them, that they're going to put it down. And yeah, that's true for the most part for me too. I'm getting better about DNFing in the first few chapters if I don't like it. I used to try to give books a really, really long chance, but sometimes you can just tell in the first few chapters if it's not gonna work for you. This person says, I will DNF if it's hopelessly depressing. Haha, same. Characters going through nothing but trauma throughout the whole book without breaks is completely uninteresting to me. Yes, you are speaking my language. If I want to be sad about the human condition, I'll go read the news. I don't want that in fiction. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people absolutely love the misery porn. Some people live for it. It can make them feel better about their own lives if they're watching a character be more miserable than them. That's the kind of escapism that they want or need. Sometimes you just want a good wallow. But I am not one of those people, and me and this viewer agree on that. I hate misery porn. I hate a character who just suffers the whole time and never cracks a smile and is never happy. And if that makes me less cool of an individual, maybe I'm less edgy than you thought I was, I don't care. I don't care. I like happiness sometimes. And I'm glad I'm not the only one. This person mentions if the prose is flat, cliched, uninspired, and I've heard it a million times before, like I can almost finish the character's sentences. I can't bring myself to finish the book even if the story is good. That's a bit different. That's not something I have a problem with, but obviously this reader does. What do you guys think? Do you quit if the writing itself is just too cliched, too average? They also mention if they can't get into the characters and can't tell the characters apart. Usually I give a book a little while to help distinguish the characters, and I don't 100% DNF if the characters are a little bit flat, because so many books do have characters that are a little flat for me. I'm very picky about characters. But if you can't tell one character from another to the point where it's getting confusing, yeah, DNF. This one's different as well. It depends on a couple of different things, but I'm a formatter, and if the formatting of the book is appalling, I mean difficult to read appalling, I'll DNF the book without getting very far. This is an interesting situation that I don't run into because I listen to audiobooks. So the formatting of the book doesn't really affect me. Now, some authors can do a lot of really fun stuff with formatting. There are some books that really play with it and it gets very interesting. But I could see how it could put people off, especially if it's just not working. They also say that they DNF'd a book that seemed like it was asking the question of what's the worst thing I can do to this character and what's the most unbelievable way they'd react to it. I think I've read some books like that. There was a YA book I read as a teen and the character didn't make a single smart decision without having been led toward it like a toddler. And even then she'd look at the smart decision and say nope and do the opposite. So frustrating. Yeah, some authors think that they can create conflict by just making their main character real dumb. Make all of the bad choices. As a reader, you start to wonder, how is this character still alive? How do they feed themselves? Your character can make bad choices, but they have to make sense in the world and for the character, not just because you need that added drama. This person says they sort of inadvertently DNF, not really on purpose. They'll start reading a book, set it down with the full intention to come back, and then just don't. And I don't know if that's necessarily because they are also a mood reader like me and they weren't in the mood for it. I don't know if that is the book's fault. So sometimes just like the mental place of your reader can have a huge effect. Also, factors like what's going on in your life, how busy you are, and mental illness can factor into whether you intend to return to a book and never do. This person also says, and this is a fun point, I will say I'm also much more likely to finish a book if I know I can have a conversation with someone about it. So that's really cool and interesting. If they know there's going to be a social aspect where they can talk about the book with somebody afterwards, then they're more likely to keep reading it. And that's really interesting. It makes me think about myself because sometimes I do finish a book just to make a review, and that's a little bit like talking to people after you finish a book. So I think that is a little bit of a factor for me as well. I just cheat and talk to a camera and whoever wants to listen can listen. This person says that too much gore and purple prose can turn them off of a book. They also mention that they get frustrated if they were promised something by the blurb and the book isn't that. Keep in mind that with professional publishing, the author does not write their own blurb. This person also mentions reading stamina being a factor, similar to the person above who mentioned that they pick up a book with the full intention to keep reading it and then never come back. This person has similar attention issues. I have attention issues, so any additional obstacle a book places in my way can lead to the reading stamina getting depleted before I finish the book. Those obstacles may be anything from inconsistent characters, unstimulating plot, or even a word the writer uses that pulls me out of the story in some way. I like this. It kind of gives you an idea of like a stamina bar. If you're a gamer, you've got a stamina bar, and you're reading along and it's slowly depleting your stamina. And you run into things in your reading experience that take bigger chunks out of the stamina bar. And even something as simple as a word that pulls you out of the story, if it hits in the wrong place, if your stamina bar is almost to the bottom and it takes off that last little chunk of stamina, that could cause you to set the book down. Love that mental image, and I think it's a really interesting one to take into account. This person mentions that if it's clear the author has not researched what they're writing, that can turn them off, and yeah, that can definitely be a factor. Like, for example, I know a lot about horses, and it's often evident while I'm reading that the writer has done no research about horses whatsoever. I was reading a book, it was a fantasy book, and the main character was like, I hate horses and horses hate me. And then she went to the stable, chose a like ridiculously tall, like 17 hands tall stallion, and rode off on him. And I was like, there are not enough sugar cubes in the world to keep you on that horse. Now, that won't make me DNF if it's evident that the author hasn't done their research, especially with things like horses, because I'm so used to it. Nobody knows what they're talking about. It's ridiculous. It will definitely add to that pile. It will deplete the stamina bar a little bit more if it's obvious that the author has done no research. This moment just makes me think of the pig challenge from The Savior's Champion, and just reminding all of us authors out there, myself included, if you don't do any research, you're gonna look really dumb to somebody who knows about pigs. This person says, if I'm more than 3 chapters in and the inciting incident hasn't happened yet and there's nothing else to grab my attention, I'm probably not going to keep reading. I have heard that you should have your inciting incident within the first 2 chapters. I usually end up with it in chapter 2, sometimes in chapter 1, but usually in chapter 2. So that's just something to remember. Some readers will only give your book about 3 chapters, and I kind of agree if you haven't got anything, like even hinting at what the plot is going to be by chapter 3, you need to do some reworking. You can even give us a promise, as long as that promise is enticing enough, like this will happen, hang on, wait for it, it's going to be worth it. Give us something, some hefty breadcrumbs to keep us going. This person also does not like torture porn. Thank you. This is interesting. If the main character is a writer or a reader, I've been burned too many times by this. That is interesting. A lot of main characters in contemporary are readers because the author is usually a reader, and that's a very simple thing from yourself to put into a character. Often, though, it is pretty cliche. They usually read like the same like 5 classics in most books that I've encountered, especially YA books. It's like, I want my main character to be quirky, so she reads Jane Austen and Shakespeare, and that's it. But also the main character being a writer is an interesting distinction. I have not actually read that many books where the main character is a writer, but some of the ones that I have, I actually found pretty relatable, so I'd be curious to know what this person, like, what about a character being a writer turns this person off? Again, we have the book is marketed as one genre and then it is another. That comes down to marketing, and unless you are an indie, you don't usually have a lot of control over that. So that could be very frustrating for the author of the book as well as the reader. What we can take away from this, though, as indies is that you should just be honest about what your book is. You should first think really long and hard about what your book is, but then be very honest about what it is. Like, I could tell people that The Wolf and the Hawk is a fantasy adventure story, when in fact it is a romance. And perhaps I would get more readers, because some people are like, I don't want to read it because it's a romance. But then the readers that I do get might just be absolutely infuriated and frustrated because it wasn't what they were expecting. So do your research and your due diligence to figure out what kind of book you have written and advertise it as such. Here's something that won't necessarily turn me away from your book, but it will if there's too much of it, and that is sexual assault. Especially if it's treated as an oops, teeny mistake. They're especially mentioning if it's the love interest who does the sexual assault, but I also count it like they say, well, having one of the MCs experience rape from an antagonist to have tension in the book isn't great. At least I'm not expecting to side with the rapist in those scenes. That's true, but I also hate that trope. I find it incredibly lazy if the only way that you can prove that your villain is evil is to have him sexually assault your main character. Especially if you don't do anything with it. If the main character then just is like, ho-hum, I'm going back about my life, or, oh, I'm stronger now, so they almost should be thanking their rapist, I am not interested. This person says, I can handle characters I don't like, or even a plot I don't care about, but I draw the line at flat, boring prose. That's interesting. I know a lot of readers don't necessarily even notice the prose that much if the other elements of the story are drawing them in. So it is interesting to me how many people I have here who are commenting that the prose can turn them off. This is something that I encounter sometimes with my own books, because I am an indie and it is very expensive to get multiple editors. This person says, when there are egregious errors in spelling, grammar, and punctuation. I don't mind a few. I like the smug superiority I feel when I point them out. But if it's so bad it's unreadable, I won't finish it. And I have discovered that what makes a level of mistakes make a book unreadable varies widely from person to person. And I'm not blaming them, because for some people, little errors like that are just taking huge chunks off the reading stamina bar. It doesn't bother me. I've came up reading a lot of fan fiction. Like, you have to have some pretty hefty errors to make me stop reading your book. Your book has to be basically unreadable. I might chuckle at an error or two, but that does not bother me. But I do know that it bothers other people, and I also do know, you don't need to point it out, that there are still some errors and mistakes in my own books, and I understand if that is the thing that puts you off. But that is a good lesson for those of us who are self-published, and those of us, pointing at myself, who just do not notice errors in my writing and in other people's. The most frustrating thing is that, like, I can send my book away to an editor and it comes back and it looks so clean to me, and someone else will read it and tell me that it is completely swimming in errors, and I just can't see them. This was a rant. This was a whole distracted ramble. This person also mentions that a lot of like newbie mistakes can turn them off of a book, but won't necessarily be an automatic DNF, but can pile up to turn into a DNF. So describing a character by them looking in a mirror or other reflective surface, using the word orb or any reference to gemstones when describing eyes. I'm plain, and I'm not like other girls because I don't like makeup and I wear jeans and a tank top and a hoodie. This is another person who mentions that sexual assault can turn them off of a book, especially when it's the romantic interest. Many of the people here, and I haven't been pointing it out every time, mention that flat characters they can't relate to are a reason to DNF. So just kind of goes to show how important characters are to most readers, myself included. So those were some of my viewers' thoughts on why they DNF a book. What did you take away from it? What can help us as authors going forward? I think there were a lot of helpful things in there, but also, again, it does go to show you that what makes one person DNF a book might not make another person DNF. So, especially if you are querying, you're gonna get a lot of like very early DNFs from agents who are really just looking for any reason to DNF. And maybe we learned something in this video that can help with that, who knows? There was a little chatter a while ago on Twitter with people being like, if you DNF my book, I consider that completely disrespectful. You owe the author to keep reading if you started. And quite frankly, I think that's bullshit. If you are not enjoying my story, I don't want you to force yourself to get through it. Like, I don't understand why any author would want somebody to drag themselves through a story they're not enjoying. I want people who like my book to read my book, and if you start it and you don't like it, then stop. I mean, unless you're doing a hate read or something like that. Do not understand this whole idea that it's disrespectful to the author if you don't keep reading their book. If you're not enjoying your time, I'm pretty sure most authors want you to move on to something you will enjoy. Most of us don't write books to make you suffer. Most of us. Maybe some of the people who write the misery porn books do. Alright y'all, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed your time here with me in my living room on my comfy dad chair. I really need to stop doing that thing where I plan to record one video in particular and then not record that video. Anyway, if you want to see more videos, there's a ton here on my channel, so many. Look, there's a lot of stuff here and the odds are in your favor you're gonna find something else you like. Also, you can pop over to my Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get exclusive content never seen here on the regular channel. So that's exciting. If you want to check out my book and see if you DNF it or not, it's available, The Wolf and the Hawk Fantasy Romance, available now on Amazon. And it has an audiobook, so you can avoid any of those spelling errors that I talked about. Just listen to the audio. All of the links to my social media and all of the other things are in the doobly-doo for ease of your clicking, and I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. Can I take your order?
Yes, I would like to order one Melissa, AC, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Ashley, Sophia, Merween, Kit, Hidden Glade, Persephone, Light Julie, Belle, Patrick, Anne Sophie, Callison, Ray, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, Sarah, and Lennox. You mean I can get them all in the Patrons That Are Awesome meal? I'll take it. We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.